Hello, I am Gert Wastyn. I am a PhD researcher. I worked as an animator illustrator, and let's see what the first question is. What inspired you to pursue a PhD in design, and what are the main research areas you focus on in your work? Well, I've always been working with experimental technologies, as I worked as an expanded animator. It's not classical animation, so you're working for as a VJ, or you do create visuals for theater. So I was doing all these video mapping things before the software existed. So when I got the chance to do a PhD in at Luca, well, actually at KU Leuven, I really was already looking at VR and XR, and what were all these possibilities of this technology, not as an entertainment tool, but as a creation tool. So I wanted to create projects around this and workshops around this, and see what I can organize to showcase all these practices. So the second question, how do you approach research in design, and what methodologies do you find most effective in your research? Well, in this art-based research, my approach was always very hands-on. I had the philosophy, if I want to do this, I want to start right away. So I got the opportunity to work on an existing project, and that was for me very valuable, because I could immerse myself completely in VR and animation, because I didn't really use it in such a way. So I learned a lot from that first experience, and after that I created my own projects. I learned from the lessons from before, and created workshops for that, and after that interviewed innovators in the field that I got to know during these projects. And then afterwards I would reflect on these projects that finished by creating a paper on a particular element that emerged during these projects. So yeah, that is my answer. Third question, how do you ensure that your research is innovative and contributes to advancing the field of design and the arts? Well, I actually didn't really hesitate to start collaborating with the innovators and pioneers in virtual animation and XR. That way, that the philosophy was that I was very close to, at the forefront actually, of new developments in that field. So if there was anything that, like a vacuum or new opportunities, I would know more easily. One really powerful tool that helped me a lot during that was conducting interviews. You could just talk to people, but contacting them with a clear list of questions really gave me a good insight in early development of virtual animation. For instance, I contacted Daniel Pikes, which is the Spanish Disney animator. He worked for Disney for like 12 years, but he was is a very important figure in virtual animation. He was there from the beginning, and he helped me immensely during that interview. Lydia Choi was the developer of Adobe Medium, which is also a VR tool, and I contacted her, and she said, okay, no problem, let's just have this interview, all online of course, but this is a very valuable tools to help me on my quest. Can you provide an example of a research project you worked on and explain how you designed the study and collected data? What were some challenges you faced in conducting the research, and how did you overcome them? One of the projects that I worked on involved organizing multiple workshops where we explored the various ways in which virtual reality can be utilized as a creative tool. Well, divided the workshops into different stages because there are many tools and many ways of creating and designing in VR. So the first phase was basically training people during the workshop how to use VR as a modeling tool. That was with a software called Gravity Sketch. I also did a workshop where we use an experimental tool called Multibrush, which has a more, the focus is more on collaborating together on one VR design with many people. Later on, we did VR animation workshops with software called Quill. That was together with the Disney animator Daniel Pikes. Collecting the data afterwards was relatively straightforward. We had notes that were taken during the classes. There were questionnaires handed to the students after the fact. We had the physical data of all the models and animations, of course. The biggest challenge was actually a bit came out of left field because the workshops were held mostly during COVID and COVID lockdowns. So in the pandemic, as you know, most of the classes were online. So some, like the majority of these were also online. So I had to learn ways of teaching like a practical class, a design class, which are usually very hands-on, and how to do them in VR. And this turned actually kind of into a blessing because we learned how to create these virtual classrooms or collab rooms that are also available in Gravity Sketch. And I turned out it was a very valuable learning experience because we wrote a paper about using these collaborative VR rooms and how we could use them to teach practical designing skills. All right, so final question. What advice do you have for aspiring design and art researchers, and what skills do you think are essential for success in this field? I just think you don't have to be afraid to talk to people. You can read a lot and you can research a lot on the internet, and that can be very helpful. But you cannot know everything by doing it that way. Sometimes you just need to get out there and interact with others. And I know, because some of us are introverts, this is like a challenge, but I promise you that you will be rewarded in the end for the experience and also the knowledge that will help you further in your research. So that was it. I hope I helped you a bit. Who knows? Bye.